Han. Han on your left, Kiihne on your right. It's Sultai mid-range against Bant Klein of the Hadanas variety. These players have been given the green light. Don't forget, we got that time shifter technology, and if you want to see what these players are playing, Cardboard Live is the way to do so. Thanks to our friends there, and that'll be up in just a moment, as Kiihne's going to start off with a card that could be integral to this format. It's Llanowar Elves.
Yep. Well, you need to play with a bunch of untapped green sources for the first turn, and we saw a Gruul aggro deck earlier today not even play Llanowar Elves because of that consideration. That said, jumping ahead on mana, so important just kind of in general in games that are shaped by creatures and removal spells. And now when you have keywords like adapt, you have the explore stuff going on, you have so much to do with your mana at all times. It's pretty hard to flood out.
This will be a Merfolk Branchwalker here for Alex. He'll reveal an Incubation Druid, a card that both players currently do have on the battlefield. Now, Ari Lax, one of my favorite writers for Star City Games on the premium side, he wrote a fantastic article about this card and all the things that this thing can enable. This is one heck of a mana accelerant.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
This card is, it's one of my favorite designs in the set, and I think it's a really nice, it's mana acceleration for that stage of the game. It's a thing to do in the middle, which is the adapt part of it. And then it also transitions to something where you can play with all of your big mana payouts as well, because it generates so much mana once it has a counter on it.
So it's kind of good early, good middle, good late.
Right,
it also
all
enables,
stages.
It enables a play like this, turn 1 mana accelerant, turn 2 mana accelerant into Vivian Reed, way ahead of schedule here for Zachary Kiihne. Now, you got to remember, for Kiihne, he's coming off of a top 8 at our Invitational to close out 2018, and he had a lot of success with Selesnya. Now, this is a little bit of an accelerated version of his Selesnya, but Selesnya didn't have access to Incubation Druid. If it did, perhaps he would have played it. He's very familiar and very safe in these green-based strategies, and you see it once again here. The card that he does reveal there, it looks like it's going to be the Biogenic Ooze. Mm-hmm. And that's a card he's playing quite a few copies of, 3 in the main deck.
I've seen really polarized range of opinions on that one.
Yes.
Most of the talk that I've seen involves trying to play it in the Mana Flare decks as a normal card that happens to be really good once you have Wild Growth. But I have not seen a whole lot of talk about it as just a value play for green decks that make a fair bit of mana. But Zachary Kiihne obviously feels differently.
And there you see the 5-mana 2/2. Now, when it enters the battlefield, you create a 2/2 green Ooze token. And then at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each Ooze creature you control. This is an Ooze. The token is an Ooze. And then 1 GGG, which that is a somewhat restrictive mana cost. But if you can do it, you create a 2/2 green Ooze creature token. And then you're kind of going nuts with all the Oozes as Zach is going to activate his Vivian Reed once again, I believe. Looks like he's found a land off of that. The powerful Planeswalker getting some work in as it's on 4 loyalty counters right now. Again, this is week number 1 of Ravnica Allegiance Standard, so players are trying out new cards and new things. Incubation Druid, I think, is going to be good in a lot of decks. Vivian Reed is an old standby that we know is good. Breeding Pool, well, it's Breeding Pool, of course, that's going to be good. Do we know how good the Ooze is going to be? Well, let's find out this game in a mid-range mirror how good this card can be. If it will resolve, there's no guarantee of that.
Yeah, I know it's sort of confusing because it's broken up in a bunch of different ways, but assuming that your opponent doesn't have a removal spell on the spot, the floor of it is 5 mana to get 2 3/3s. Mm-hmm. If you have more mana to work with, if it stays around and play longer than that, it gets even better. So it's not a bad rate.
We'll get some big dice on these creatures here to make it so we know that they have counters on them. Incubation Druid has adapted, which means that Alex has access to a lot of mana. Now, what is he going to do with this mana is the question. He's going to start by attacking Merfolk Branchwalker into Vivian Reed, and we'll see if Zachary has interest in blocking or not. Looks like Llanowar Elves will jump in front of that, so a little chump block action. Incubation Druid's going to start tapping for a lot of mana. Incubation Druid and Hydroid Crassus, they're obviously going to be friends, and these might be friends too. This is a fine finale. The finality half is going to take care of all Zachary Kiihne's creatures. The Incubation Druid is enormous now, and now Vivian Reed's going to tick up here for Kiihne. So he'll take a look at the top couple of cards and try to rebuild the battlefield. As he may have been missing a white source of mana, he slams down Temple Garden. If you don't mind tilting your head there at home, finality for black-green sorcery. You may put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature you control, then all creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. So Incubation Druid is the last creature standing. This will be a Conclave Tribunal after that Incubation Druid to take care of the other Incubation Druid.
And the Druid plays so well finality because it's a big mana jump to be able to cast it, and then it's a thing that lives through it. An easy place to put your counters. I expect to see a fair bit of those two cards paired.
Alex does have a copy of Hydroid Crassus in hand. Not a bad place to go. So he'll gain a little bit of life and draw a couple of cards. Now, Patrick, I'm curious, the game designer and you, this is a cash trigger.
Yes.
Not a resolution trigger. How do you feel about that?
I don't mind giving some play against counterspells that gives it a little bit more texture than this spell can't be countered. You get a little bit of money for your trouble. It's a lot of investment, but it's not like the person with the counterspell in their hand is just completely blown out. They still answer the creature. Cast is a little bit... I'm not the biggest fan of shining a spotlight on the difference between cast and enters the battlefield, and there's some rules issues that can come up in ways that it can get adjudicated in tournaments that isn't ideal. But in general, I like the spirit of make it good against counterspells without making it just an all-or-nothing proposition.
Deputy of Detentions has been revealed here by Zachary. He'll play a Hallowed Fountain untapped. He'll fall a little bit lower. He's going to adapt, and now he'll play the Deputy. What I'm learning during this particular game is Incubation Druid, the adapt seems totally reasonable to be able to get to, and this thing's going to have a lot of effect at all stages of the game.
And we just saw there something that comes up too. It is a rebate. I mean, you can just go turn, I have 5 mana, here it goes. But Kiihne here is in the spot where he has enough mana left over to do it. Then now the Druid is basically a 3 mana rebate the turn that you spend the 5 and do something else.
This will be 5 mana. Vivian Reed here for Alex, but Alex is behind on the battlefield now, so this might be a Vivian Reed to draw a card, and then it dies.
Yeah.
Potentially. Now, we'll see what the reveal is, obviously.
Well, I might be mulling over doing something about the Conclave Tribunal. I think that's a little mopey here. As things stand, there's not enough on the battlefield for Kiihne to just trivialize the Vivian Reed, so maybe you get another turn out of it. I don't know.
Now, we got to remember, in the previous standard format, when Golgari midrange was kind of the best thing going on, that was very much a Vivian Reed deck. And it was kind of, who can get to the Vivian Reed Ultimate to make my Carnage Tyrants better, to make my creatures better, obviously, all the good stuff that's involved with that. And that might be what things kind of boil down to in these type of mid-range mirrors, potentially. Now, Hydroid Crassus is obviously going to be good. We saw Alex already cast one, and now he's finding one off of the Vivian Reed activation. But we can't forget how powerful this Planeswalker is, especially ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and well, there's another issue with the Hydroid Crassus is a way of fighting Vivian Reed. Hydroid Crassus has flying.
Yeah.
So it's not... drawing some cards is good, but if the games are centered around Vivian Reed, that card doesn't match up the best.
That's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. As Vivian Reed will be activated here by Kiihne. You saw Alex play a cast down to take care of the Incubation Druid. Kiihne will take a look at the top couple of cards. He'll select Glacial Fortress there off of the Planeswalker. Glacial Fortress will enter the battlefield. We're going to have some mana tapped here by Kiihne, see what his plan is going to be. And we haven't really seen a huge spell out of him. I guess we've seen one of these oozes before. We're going to see another one again. This is kind of his mid-range weapon of choice here in this matchup, it appears, and for his deck this weekend. As you see the powerful Planeswalker here from Core Set 2019. You've seen the +1 be activated here by both players a couple of times. There's Conclave Tribunal to take care of the Vivian Reed that Alex Hahn has. And as you mentioned, Patrick, the destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying, in particular Hydroid Crassus, might mean that the Hydroid might not be the answer that mid-range players are looking for.
Well, the game can be about a lot of different things at the same time. It's not necessarily just Vivian Reed or bust. And you can sideboard, negates and duresses to make yourself better against that sort of thing. It's just how those cards line up against one another. This looks good for Han, but basically the last Hydroid Crassus just amounted to 6 mana, draw 2. This one's 8 mana, draw 3. It's not bad, it's stuff to work with, but it's not really an answer to Vivian Reed.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is it's an easy tick down of the dice to take care of the Hydroid Crassus if Kiihne wants to. But it looks like he's going to plus. Llanowar Elves among the cards he's looking at. I think he may have just found a Hydroid Crassus of his own. We can't forget, too, throughout all of this Vivian Reeding and Hydroid Crassing that's going on, is that Biogenic Ooze it looks to be a pretty good threat right now.
Yep.
Can make more, and all that stuff can continue to grow.
Yeah, what I'm noticing about Kiihne's deck here that I really like is he's not short on things to do with his mana.
Yeah.
It's really hard for him to flood out. He's got just, besides the fact that he's drawing a bunch of cards, he's got a lot of mana sinks too.
Deputy of Detention is going to come in here. Another great card to take care of Hydroid Crassus. Now, I wonder, and I'll have to talk to Zach about this at some point this weekend, did he build his mid-range deck in mind to say, you know what, I know Hydroid Crassus is going to be popular, and I'd love ways to cleanly be able to handle it. Deputy and Vivian Reed are two great answers to that card.
Yeah. I mean, those cards you can play for other reasons too, but they're doing a lot of work in this sort of mid-range mirror with a lot of similar cards, and I imagine it's informed by what you're just talking about.
We're going to head back over to Alex Hahn right now, who is pretty far behind. Life total is somewhat high because of the Hydroid Crassus, as he falls down to 17 after those attacks. But he's got a battlefield he's got to contend with here. And what makes the oozes so powerful is not one clean removal spell is going to get it done.
No.
Your cast downs of the world, all the other stuff, not going to be enough. I suppose I'll rescind my comment a little bit because Fine Finale, as we saw earlier, does take care of things, but there's some setup required with that.
Definitely. I mean, I think the issue that you're seeing here is, Alex Hahn is built around Wild Growth Walker. He's trying to get, some traction against red decks, I'm sure. But this stuff is just not very good in the mirror match. Mm-hmm. Kiihne's overpowering him pretty easily. The Jade Light Rangers, a lot of the stuff is just who cares. Maybe you're drawing a card, maybe not. You're not really getting in a position to attack, whereas Kiihne is playing with just much more powerful cards pound for pound.
So it looks like the actual biogenic ooze will be killed via cast down, but the ooze tokens are still left. As we continue on here, Kiihne's drawn a handful of cards here with Vivian Reed. We might be going to the ultimate. We will be. So that means, of course, that all of Zachary's creatures are going to get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2, have Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible.
I mean, Han can't play through this.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
We're in garbage time now.
Yeah. I mean, the one trick here, and I was going to mention Fine Finale, but even that is the creatures are too big.
Yep.
So we might see Alex play another turn or two, but if I'm Zachary Kiihne, I've kind of accomplished my goal. Is I played a Vivian Reed very early. My opponent did not have a clean answer. And this is to note, and I'll let you take a look here. Actually, I have Alex's deck list in front of me. Just clean answers to Planeswalkers, because we're not really looking at a hero's downfall in this metagame. There are 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt, but that's really about it.
Yep.
That's really about it.
No, I mean, you're hoping that, Han's deck, you're kind of hoping that your interaction for Planeswalkers is, I'm playing with creatures and removal spells. It's going to be hard for my opponent to get so far ahead on the battlefield that I can't do anything about a Planeswalker. And Kiihne's strategy here, his build, makes that really prohibitive because he's got clean answers, he's a little bit bigger on the ground, and you're seeing Han really struggle just to keep up the raw card quality. The gap there is too big. Even with Han drawing multiple copies of Hydroid Crassus and drawing a bunch of cards for his trouble.
Yeah, and if I'm Zachary, I'm just kind of like, I don't really care. You can
I
have
don't care.
those cards.
Don't care. Not good enough.
Looks like a Temple Guardian's going to enter the battlefield untapped. And yeah, Kiihne says, you did your Hydroid Crassus, I'm going to do my Hydroid Crassus. I'm going to gas back up. I'm going to gain some life. I'm already ahead on the battlefield. Now I'm just pushing myself further ahead to a point where, truth be told, I'd be shocked if Alex Hahn can catch back up.
Yeah. I don't think he can really play through a Vivian Reed emblem, setting aside all the other issues going on.
Yeah, no kidding. So Han will draw a card, and he's going to survey the battlefield. And we'll see what he can find here as he's down to 9 life. But I'm with you, partner. I just don't see a way to be able to slog through this emblem.
He doesn't have any sort of, haymaker to cheat the thing.
No.
He's just playing. He's just got, normal mid-range cards.
Yeah, and Kiihne says, draw, attack with all my stuff. Best of luck with your blocks. We'll see some mana tapped here. So this will probably be a copy of Vraska's Contempt, sure. That'll take care of the Hydroid Crassus. Great stuff. Gain some life. But this feels like it is delaying the inevitable in some regards here for Alex Hahn.
Way better battlefield on Kiihne's side, plus the Vivian Reed emblem, plus a handful of cards.
Obviously, you can see for both sides, good mana here for both sides. Mana does not appear to be an issue for these mid-range decks. Finding the right balance of shock lands and check lands will be interesting as we work our way through the format, especially with mono red and Boros aggro being decks that can punish you for drawing too many shock lands in your three-color deck.
Especially if you're playing with Land of War Elves. That changes the equation quite a bit,
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
Because it puts a lot more desire to have Temple Gardens and breeding pools at the expense of Hinterland Harbor.
And I think that'll be interesting, right? Land of War Elves is such a powerful card, and we know that Kiihne, he's got 4, right?
I would have to assume, yeah.
Yeah, so he's got 4, and Alex has 4. So do these mid-range decks? Is it just a prerequisite that you have to play for? Maybe.
Well,
It is powerful.
It certainly informs your mana base, and Kiihne here, not surprisingly, maxing out on breeding pools and Temple Gardens.
Yep.
8 of those, plus 4 basic forests against 2 Sun Petal Grove and 4 Hinterland Harbor. So a control deck, I think, would typically like to lean a little bit more on the M10 lands to preserve their life total a little bit. Kiihne has it tilted the other way because of Land of War Elves.
Zachary Kiihne is going to win game number 1 here over Alex Hahn. Bet Climb, even though we didn't see Adonis Climb, does win game number 1 over Sultai Midrange. We will go to the sideboards here, and we are going to start with Alex Hahn, who's got 3 copies of Duress, 2 Thrashing Brontodon, 2 Vraska Relic Seeker, 2 Negate, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Cry of the Carnarium, a Cast Down, and a Vraska's Contempt. We're in a mid-range matchup. What do you like here?
The Planeswalkers, the Negates, and the Disdainful Strokes, possibly Duress as well. Sort of the stuff that's good at trading off against the bigger and more powerful plays.
Okay. Other side of things here for Zachary Kiihne, who's up a game. He's got 4 Knight of Autumns. I think that's going to be a popular card if you can cast it in this format. There are a lot of good enchantments. 2 Lyra Dawnbringers, 2 Negates, 2 Shall I, Voice of Plenty, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Baffling End, and a Frilled Mystic, which is the new Mystic Snake.
Kind of much the same story here. I like the Disdainful Strokes and the Negates and the Frilled Mystic as well. Just want the good cheap counter spells. A lot of the matchup is about sneaking through the first good 4, 5, 6 mana play. And Negates and Disdainful Strokes, Frilled Mystics play well in those games.
We saw some back and forth there, but ultimately it was Vivian Reed that stole the day for Zachary Kiihne, pardon me. So we'll see if Alex Hahn is able to do that in game number 2 as these players get ready for our first sideboarded game. In the meantime, we're going to talk about Fireballs and Kitty Cats. That's, of course, Purdue-ken. It's available in quite a few different things here, partner.
Playmats, sleeves, player bundles, over at go.starcgames.com/creature collection.
Our entire creature collection does live at that hyperlink, so if you're not into Purdue-ken, but some other things that we've done over the years, head over to go.starcitygames.com/creature collection today. Cats throwing fireballs. That's definitely my thing. I'm into it. Were you? Yeah, of course. But I was going to ask if you're a Street Fighter player. You were.
Balrog.
Yeah, but no fireballs for you.
Balrog.
Punch City.
Punch City. Duck punch, standing punch, jumping punch, block. Those are my preferred moves.
I love it. I love it. Zachary Kiihne, I'm curious if he's played some Street Fighter. He's a younger guy. He's probably playing the Street Fighter, 5, 6, 7 nowadays? Who knows? The 22-year-old from Amherst, Massachusetts, with 6 open top 8s on the resume. In 2018, he played in 6. All-time, though, he has 5. He's got that invitational top 8 as well at the 2018 SCGCon Winter. Peer mentor is a 22-floor freshman at UMass Amherst. A little bit about him. He loves a green deck. As now we're doing a little bit different stuff here with our stats. 2018 SCG Tour Opens played, of course, as we make our way through 2019. We'll be able to tell you how many Opens they've played, and then their all-time stats. Open top 8s of 5, invitational top 8s of 1 here for Zachary Kiihne, who's got an interesting-looking deck here this weekend. I will say that.
Seems really well suited for a green mid-range mirror.
Yeah.
I would much rather be on Kiihne's side of this than on the Explore package. No question.
But let me ask you this. As you take a look at Kiihne's deck list, you've been playing mono red.
I would much rather play, if I'm mono red, I want to play against Kiihne's deck, not Han's.
Yeah.
The Explore package is really good against mono red. Kiihne's leaning a lot on mana creatures and big plays. You shock and lightning strike a couple things and put some pressure on him. A lot of his draws are going to go nowhere.
Yeah. And then just be able to burn him out after that probably and be okay.
He doesn't really gain a whole lot of life, His interactions on the pricier side, he's sort of anticipating that his mana creatures are going to go unassailed, and that really doesn't happen very much against mono red.
Both players take a look at the opener. Alex Hahn will be on the play here. He'll start things off with a breeding pool tapped as we head back over to Zachary Kiihne. His breeding pool is going to enter untapped. He's got the initiative now as he kicks things off with a Land of War Elves.
I think Land of War Elves is a big part of having edge in the green mirror, too. just who gets to the first big play, who gets their Planeswalker first in the post-board games, who can do something with counterspell backup. All that is really where the games often land. And Llanowar Elves is so good in those kind of fights.
Well, the first big play in the last game was by Zachary Kiihne. He got to play Vivian Reed on turn 3. That's not going to happen this time. Jadelight Ranger is going to reveal 2 lands there for Alex Hahn. So just a 2-1 Jadelight Ranger thus far as we head back over to Zachary Kiihne, who played a copy of the Growth Chamber Guardian. That's, of course, a new one there from Ravnica Allegiance. One that you feel, and you said this in round 1, might be a little overrated, but still good.
It's still good, and it's a card that sort of, you can kind of generically slot into a lot of decks. My problem with the card is I don't think it's very good against the red decks because it just dies a lot. And even in the matchups like this, I think it's rare that the game is going to come down to just doing this over and over again and overpowering your opponent. There's so many ways to draw extra cards, so many ways to clog up the battlefield. So that's my concern with the card is it. I don't know if it's quite good enough against mono red. I don't know if it's quite good enough in the mirror.
Here is Hydroid Crassus. It'll be a 2-2. Gain a life, draw a card, which is still a totally fine card.
Yeah, 4-mana 2-2 flying trample game 1 draw a card would show up in some decks.
Right?
That's the floor here.
Yeah, that is a totally fine Magic card.
Yeah, that's a totally acceptable card.
If you don't have your Hydroid Crassuses and you're looking to play some mid-range decks, I recommend that you do pick them up. Now here comes our first big play, it looks like. Maybe from Alex Hahn, your Grand Prix Richmond champion late last year. We have seen some on the SCG Tour as well over the years. But it looks like he's thought about tapping some mana and playing a spell, but now he's just going to pass the turn back and put his shields up. Now, this could imply a lot of different things. Go ahead.
Possibly just looking to adapt this turn, maybe passing with a counter spell at the ready.
It'll be a baffling end from Zach Kiihne. Baffling End is something Alex is going to take a look at, so we'll take a look at Baffling End as well. This one saw a little bit of play. This is actually a card that Kiihne's cast probably more than most people.
Mm-hmm. I like it quite a bit in this kind of matchup because it answers some critical cards. And even if the opponent has removal for it, you don't really care that much about a 3-3. The battlefield's going to get too clogged up for that to be a real card in play.
Yeah, what's interesting about this card, too, is I think a lot of people think of this effect as your cast outs and Oblivion Rings in which I kill it, I get my creature back. That's not the case here. That creature's gone forever.
Yeah, it's 2 separate transactions.
Yep.
First transaction, your thing's dead. Second transaction, if you can blow up an enchantment, you can get a 3-3.
That's right. So Baffling End took care of Incubation Druid. And now we're going to head back over to Alex Hahn.
And that's a brutal turn there for Hahn because he had, it looks like, nothing to do with his mana other than adapt. So that's just a turn down the toilet.
Yep. Speaking of adapting, Growth Chamber Guardian is looking to maybe do so here on Hahn's end step, which means that Alex will probably need an answer. Well, we'll find out if he has one as we continue to work our way through this game. There's Thrashing Brontodon. Now, if you're looking to blow up enchantments, that's a way to do it. We'll have an activation here of Growth Chamber Guardian. The adapt will resolve, so now I get to dig up another one. So this is looking like best case scenario here for Growth Chamber Guardian given the situation.
The game's being played at a slow pace. It's the biggest thing on the battlefield. This is the spot you want to draw up. And it's going to make it prohibitive here for Hahn to be able to deploy a Planeswalker because Kiihne's probably going to have more of a battlefield presence and more size on the battlefield as well as this game kind of unfolds.
We'll head back over to Zach Kiihne now. He'll untap that Hydroid Crassus, that Llanowar Elves. He's got a nice-looking mana base here. Colors don't appear to be an issue. Has another copy of Growth Chamber Guardian in hand, and he'll serve in with the first one along with the 2/2 Flying Trampling Crassus.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a risky double block here for Hahn because if Kiihne has anything, you're just down everything. Although I guess the Thrashing Brontodon gives you a little bit of a hedge. You would at least get a 3/3 token for your trouble.
That's fair. That's fair.
So he might want a double block here. May just chump.
Looks like it's just going to be a chump. To me, if I'm seeing a chump block there by Alex, my thought process is, all right, he's probably setting up something with Fine Finality.
Yeah,
right.
Game 1, when it's unlikely Kiihne has anything to do about that, that's one thing. post-board, when you're expecting like negates and disdainful strokes, I think it's just too transparent what's going on to just chump block like that.
Here is Hydroid Crassus. Cash Trigger, of course, resolves, and now that'll be a 4-4. And now what's interesting here is, okay, if I'm Alex, I get to wipe it all up now if I have land 6. It's all gone if I find Finality. But am I winning the game?
Yep. The other issue with I guess, again, the Thrashing Bronodon gives you a bit of a hedge. If something were to happen to that, then you wouldn't even have anything to put the counters on. But I suppose in any scenario, you at least have the 3/3 to put the 2 counters on.
Yeah.
Keep something around.
Well, here's Finality. And, while this stings a little bit, if I'm Zach, I'm thinking, okay, well, I just drew some cards. I gassed back up. I'll take a hit here and my creatures are dead. But this happened in the first game, and I was totally fine.
Right. It's not the end of the line by any means. And could be a window for a Planeswalker. Or 2 spells in 1 turn, a removal spell plus a thing.
Well, there's Baffling End to take care of the Thrashing Brontodon. And now your follow-up is the Champ. And now, Growth. I want to keep calling it the Growth Chamber Champion. Growth Chamber Guardian. I'll get there. I promise. 2 of them on the battlefield now.
And Kiihne, I think, with Vivien Reid left over, so this is the spot you really want to get to. If Han kind of makes small plays here and there, doesn't use all of his mana, you're so far ahead on the battlefield, and if he taps out, then you have an opportunity to land your Planeswalker.
Interesting little exchange there. Hostage Taker comes down, and Alex immediately is going to play that Growth Chamber Guardian off of the Hostage Taker, make sure it gets the value. Now here's Vivien Reid. This was the game-winning card for Zach Kiihne in the last game.
Right.
Went all the way up to the Emblem. The Emblem is basically unbeatable in matchups like this. Take a look at the next handful of cards here for Kiihne. He's going to figure out exactly what he wants to take off the Planeswalker. He'll go with Incubation Druid, maybe looking for a little bit of an influx of mana. The follow-up is Llanowar Elves. Breeding Pool into the battlefield tapped. We're going to head back over to Alex Hahn. Alex will draw.
So adapting the Guardian here, plus Hostage Taker, does threaten Vivien Reid. Now, Kiihne's got 2 chump blockers to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And unlikely here that Han can put together 2 removal spells plus have the mana left over to adapt. But still could be some good headway made this turn.
The interesting thing in this matchup to me is that Han does have a nice reset button in Finality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where Kiihne doesn't really. There's no cleansing Nova or some way to say, okay, all the creatures in the battlefield are dead and I'm going to take over the initiative.
Right.
He's just got to kind of draw a lot of cards.
Yeah, it's tough because what we're kind of seeing here is that Kiihne can draw a lot of cards or effectively draw a bunch of cards. If you tap out for Fine Finality and Kiihne gets an opportunity to go Vivien Reid, you really didn't do a whole lot.
Sure.
Especially if Kiihne gets to go, like we saw in this game, Vivien Reid plus kill your play.
Well, we're going to see Vivien Reid die to Vraska's Contempt. So right now, if you're Zach Kiihne, he's got one thing left in Llanowar Elves. A decent enough hand, it appears, as he will tap 5 mana. And he'll be playing another copy of Vivien Reid, I think. Yes, he will. Looking for some help from the powerful Planeswalker. So top 4 cards once again in a forest, Llanowar Elves, a Temple Garden, and a Growth Chamber Guardian.
You got it.
Thank you. Thank you. Not my first rodeo.
That's pronounced rodeo.
Thank you.
And Guardian
Yeah.
of the Growth Chamber. Okay.
Yep. First show of the year is what it is. Basic Forest, the selection here for Zachary Kiihne. 3 mana. This is a Jade Light Ranger. Frilled Mystic is the reveal to the first Explorer. Seems... Well, wow.
It's super good. It's just
It is powerful.
You would like to kind of have that one as a surprise.
Yes.
But the way the game's shaping up, it looks like it's gonna be pretty good regardless. Han here running out of things to do. He's got to do a lot to be able to get that Vivian read before the advantage becomes overwhelming. So whatever. Now Han in the spot. Can he do two things here? Doesn't need to.
Doesn't need to do two. I mean, he probably is going to do two. This might be another copy of Hostage Taker.
Would have had a clean. Would have had a clean shot at the Vivian read had he had two removal spells for the creatures.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the same thing. He actually gets to attack Kiihne for some damage.
Now here's the big thing here, Han. The battlefield's clear, but Alex is basically out of cards.
Yeah.
And you know your opponent has a Frilled Mystic. So if I'm Kiihne, I've got a lot of mana. I have the ability to adapt right now because I've got excess mana floating around.
Yep. And adapting turns into a 3/5, so then the Hostage Takers aren't eligible attackers anymore.
Yeah.
Can't make any inroads with the 4/4 either. But still a J-Light Ranger to cast here for Han. Maybe that's worth test spelling out the Frilled Mystic. I don't know.
Well, he's going to start with that Jade Light Ranger. I think this is good enough.
Yep.
Right? You just want to do something. There's a land. I mean, you can attack if you want. I guess the growth chamber guardian, the GCG, not to be confused with the GCB, can come in. All right, all the knuckleheads. Fair enough. I suppose, the way to look at this is, well, the Hostage Takers aren't getting any better.
No.
Right?
This is probably your last chance to cast them in for a card on the other side.
Yep. So there's your block. Frilled Mystics on the jump in front of Hostage Taker. Llanowar Elves are going to chump block the GCG, the Growth Chamber Guardian, and Incubation Druid's just going to hang out. So a big draw step here for Kiihne. This is one of those times where you'd love to draw Hydroid Crassus.
Hydroid classes are a Planeswalker, yep.
That'll do. That'll do. Top couple of cards here. Incubation Druid among them. There's also the Biogenic Ooze. Now, this is kind of interesting, too, because part of you is thinking, man, I just need to get to that Biogenic Ooze. That can take over the game by itself, and he's going to take that, but the inability to cast it right now.
Yep, can't cast it and wants to chump block this turn. You could have taken a land and threatened to block plus adapt, but I think Kiihne just not trying to put all the eggs in the basket, saying I'll chump block here and keep Vivian Reed alive. If Han happens to draw a removal spell, that's kind of bad, but at least I have something really powerful left over to rebuild with.
Now, one thing Han did do is he took a look at his graveyard to see what was down there, and when a player does that and they're playing Find Finality in their deck, leads you to believe they may have drawn a copy of Find, as Vivian Reed will fall down to 4 counters. Now, what's the follow-up? The follow-up is a Vivian Reed for Alex Han. That's a heck of a draw step there. He will be plussing that. That's not technically true. He might be minusing to blow up a Baffling It.
Just get a 3/3 and try to put a little bit more pressure on there.
Yeah.
The problem is that I think the 3/3 just does not line up very well against the ooze that he knows is coming.
All right, well, he'll plus instead.
Yeah, I like taking a moment there and thinking about it, but and if you didn't know what Kiihne had in hand, I think it's a much more complicated case. But knowing that he's just going to be cranking out a bunch of 3/3s and 4/4s for a while, I don't think you can put that much stock in getting a 3/3 there.
Overgrown Tomb is a land that was found. It'll enter the battlefield tapped, and we'll head back over to Alex. We will watch Zachary Kiihne plus a Vivian Reed.
And I think a cadence here from Han that I think is likely to win the game is I'm ahead on the Vivian Reed. We're both drawing 2 cards a turn. Stuff is bouncing off of each other. We can't really interact that way. But if I get to the ultimate first, then that's going to bury you.
This is a hell of a turn right here for Zachary Kiihne because he's going to play a Biogenic Ooze, and then he can pay to make another one with all of the mana. So now he's got 3 oozes. That means he's got 3 3/3s in one turn and another ooze in backup. And this allows him to defend his Vivian Reed. Now it's on Alex Han to find something like Find Finality or something better than that.
Well, I mean, a Crassus here is a good find, too, off of the Vivian Reed.
It's a pretty good find. I mean, it still does run into the problem that you mentioned in game number 1, which is shoot down the old flyer.
Right. And then if it's your 3 creatures against, Kiihne's got 3 creatures against your 2, suddenly he's threatening the Vivian Reed. And if you can't get to the ultimate, that means advantage goes to Kiihne because he's closer to getting to the ultimate. To say nothing of having the ooze as something that totally dominates the battlefield.
Yeah, we can't forget that the other ooze in hand, oozes obviously work great together. So now these oozes, some of them might be 5/5s. Get out of range of Fine Finality?
Right, that's the thing. Once they're out of Fine Finality range, Han's just got to play through it, and that's, I mean, how do you do that?
So Kiihne's going to plus Vivian Reed again. So we'll take a look at the top couple of cards. There's another Biogenic Ooze in there. There's also a copy of Hadana's Climb. Now, he can't take those, but he'll take another Biogenic Ooze. So he'll play a land. He's going to play both Oozes. Oh, boy.
Yep. So next turn, Vivian Reed goes up to 8, but then Kiihne is going to have so much on the battlefield to attack with that the emblem's not going to, I don't think it's going to come to that.
Oh, boy. Who's the boss? Right now, it's Zachary Kiihne. Tell you that. These things are enormous.
I mean, forget about the Vivian Reed. Next turn might be on tap.
Right, on tap with everything?
Attack you.
Yeah. Yeah, these we're out of. We're out of finality range.
Oh yeah, way out.
Yeah, we're way out of finality. I have no idea how Alex wins now.
Yeah, these oozes.
That's outrageous.
These oozes in green mid-range mirrors where there isn't a ton of removal. Like, wow, is this a breaker?
Well, I'll say this, right? I think a lot of people coming in were thinking Hydroid Crassus was the breaker.
Yeah.
Maybe Ooze is the breaker because you can't kill it with Vivian Reed, and it clogs up the battlefield so much, and it's so much to answer.
It's good, and it's good against Vivian Reed as well.
Yeah.
It's a way of actually just overpowering that card. So, like I said, I don't know, is Kiihne giving up too many percentage points against the red decks? That's a fine question. But we've watched 2 games here where Han's gotten to do his thing. It's not like there's been a problem with his draw, and he has gotten overpowered so dramatically here that it feels like if they played 10 games, Kiihne would win 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah, I mean, we're also talking about a game, too, in which 2 hostage takers were cast and
used. Yes.
Yeah.
The guy, he got all of his money.
Yeah, he got to cast the Jade Light Ranger and the other card off of the first one, so he got to do everything he wanted to do. He can't say he didn't draw well or get to do his thing, because he absolutely did.
Got to Fine Finality both games with a thing left over.
Yep.
And got everything that Kiihne had in the spot.
In both games.
In both games.
Yep. We may have found a nice card here in Biogenic Ooze, because Alex has to block now.
Right, and if you attack with everything and Han just has to chump block to survive the turn, who cares if he's threatening a Vivian Reed?
Yeah, I don't care.
He has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I don't care at all. The Biogenic Ooze looking real good.
It's 9, 12, 16, 20, 24.
That's so much damage.
No, it's more than that. 24 plus, it's 38 coming across.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much is coming across unblocked, but yeah, that's going to do it. Zach Kiihne is going to win this game and match over Alex Han, 2-0. Hadana's Climb.